everyone. Welcome to the recovery scene. My name is Leslie. Don't forget to like and hit subscribe. Tonight I have Matt Ork. He is this past Saturday, 60 days off a 10-year addiction. And we're about to check in with Matt and hear about his journey from addiction to recovery. Hey, Matt, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm excited. I'm ready.
Me too. I'm very excited.
All right. So let's get into your story. How did your addiction start?
So my addiction started when I was about 19 or 20. I would go home for Christmas from college a lot of the times, and my dad had a prescription for hydrocodone, just Loratabs, back in the day. And I would probably just take a couple of them. I would steal a couple of them. I'm not gonna lie. I stole a couple from him. Every now and then, and I knew I liked them, but I wasn't like going down that path yet. And then
this is the dabbling stage.
Yes, this is the let me try it. I had done some before in school, and I went to a very small school, so partying was like the only thing to do. It was, in a town of about 3,000 people in country South Carolina. So the only thing there was to do was go out to the fraternity houses and drink. And, there were some other activities that went on, but, there was like maybe one or two people in the entire school that we were like, maybe this person has a problem. So it was nothing out of the ordinary is what I'm saying.
When you're surrounded by it becomes normal.
Exactly. And what we were doing was definitely dangerous. I will not sugarcoat that at all. But it was the norm. It was accepted. And when it comes to alcohol, I think a lot of people have that mentality, and it's gotten people to a lot of trouble places. But so I was kind of dabbling in that for a little bit. And then summer going to my senior year, I had to have surgery. And the doctor, of course, gave me painkillers. I remember he prescribed me this is back in like 2000, probably 2011. He gave me a full bottle of painkillers. That was back in the day when they could write, a 30-day supply. And that was, what you got however many they wrote you for. I think it was probably for like 60 or something. And they were oxycodone. And I would just take them, and at first legitimately as prescribed. And then it just kind of, started to get a little more like I realized, oh yeah, I like this feeling, remember? And I would just keep taking them. And when those ran out, I went back to the doctor, and my dad was with me at the time. And he was like, are you still having some pain? I was like, yes, immediately. I was like, yes, sir, I am. My dad was like, hold on though. I don't think he needs the oxycodone though anymore. So he wrote me a prescription for ibuprofen. I threw it in the trash can right when I left. So that was the kind of start to it. But then all that year, my senior year of college, it was a really tough year. I was trying to get into law school. I had all these ambitions. And then I want to say I was president of the fraternity. I was doing all these things. I was super active, but super stressed at the same time. And my doctor wrote me a prescription for Xanax. I personally don't like benzos. I don't have an affinity for that medication. So I used to trade those on campus for people who had pain medications, because I think like 31 or 35% of our campus were athletes. So a lot of them had either old or current or just, prescriptions they didn't use. So you could trade them for whatever you wanted, because people wanted the Xanax. And it wasn't as taboo as taking painkillers back then.
Right.
Yeah, especially in college, everyone's stressed. You have high anxiety, you're taking Adderall, you need it for the come down. It was, like I said, it was dangerous. It was a dangerous culture. But I I hated the Xanax, and I would do whatever I could to get rid of it. My friends would buy it for me to black out, take it and drink and black out. And I saw no problem with that in the time, because I was getting money to buy painkillers. And then that January no, it's February. I'm sorry. It was February. My little brother in the fraternity passed away. He died of alcohol poisoning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in the fraternity house on a sofa. And like I said, this was a school where the culture was drinking. And that's all anybody ever did. I mean, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, people were out at the fraternity houses or a fraternity house or an on-campus apartment drinking. And, not everybody drank every night, but there was always something going on. So if you wanted to, you could.
Right.
And so when that happened, it was a really big shock because it hadn't happened. Nothing like that had ever happened on our campus. People were really taken aback. People were scared. People were hurt. It's a small school. Like I said, he was 21, but finding somebody blue on a sofa is a hard experience for a lot of people, especially when it's a friend, someone they love, they cared about, a college athlete on the football team, an all-around great guy. It was really hard. And I remember having to go to we went to his funeral, not having to, choosing to go to his funeral in Florida. And then I had to take the LSAT the very next day.
Oh, wow.
So did not have such great scores on the LSAT. Dealing with the death of my fraternity brother, trying to graduate, finish school, it was all just super stressful. And of course, I was partially at home during this time, or going back and forth, because only 45 minutes from my house. So I knew, my father had these painkillers there that I like to use, for my getaway, my escape. So I started taking a little more each time. Never said anything to me, never noticed. I don't even know if he noticed at first. Because he would get like, 90 a month and only take, maybe 30 or 40. But then he started to notice when the deficit, when it started to, he wasn't having a surplus at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to a point where I graduate and I'm looking at my next step. I get into law school somewhere, but it's not where I want to go. So I actually got offered a job in California to get my master's at a school where I'd be a graduate assistant, and I would work on campus, live on campus in a fraternity house with the men, be responsible for the upkeep of the house and their conduct and everything. So it was a great opportunity, and I jumped at it because they were going to pay for my schooling. So I move out to California, not knowing a soul. My father, who is an amazing man, by the way, stopped what he was doing, helped me drive across country to move. And here I am stealing pain pills from the man to feed my budding addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And it still wasn't even at that point that I was like, you have a problem. It was just, you're stressed, you're having fun, you needed this, you deserved this, you earned this.
As addicts, we can talk ourselves in and out of anything so fast.
Oh yeah. And I call myself the habitual line stepper. Like that line that you say you're not going to cross, or that line that you say you're not going to ever, it just goes further and further back each time until it's non-existent. It might as well just be drawn in the sand, because it's just going to get erased. So when I got to California, I didn't know a single soul. The only person that I really knew or got to know was my boss. And she wasn't too far off from me in age, but she ended up leaving like a month after I got there. So she accepted a job in Las Vegas and went to go work at a school in Las Vegas. And so I'm like, I don't know what am I doing? Like, I don't know anybody here. I have no system. I had no support system. I was making friends, but it was rough at first. And while I was there, I started to have some health issues, and ended up, going back home for a brief period of time, just to, get some things figured out, worked out. Went back to school, and they could tell that something was up with me. I wasn't heavily using, but I was still, dabbling a little bit. I wasn't able to, I was able to make friends, but I wasn't able to make like super, super too deep of connections with some people. There was like probably two people that I had really good connections with who are my friends still to this day. I was able to find a drug dealer before I was able to make, super great friends. Like what that tells you about, what my situation was like.
Yeah.
But it got to a point where the school noticed something was wrong with me. And it was me not taking care of my health, my addiction kind of starting to, come to full bloom a little bit. So they were like, listen, we understand you have a lot going on. Take a break for the second semester, finish out till Christmas, go home, take a break, and come back at, the beginning of the next fall semester. Get your mental health in order and do all what you need to do and take care of it. So it was super great, super gracious, super generous of them. So I took that offer and I went home. And I wasn't taking care of my health. I wasn't taking care of my mental health. I was, just stealing painkillers from my dad left and right because I was so down. I was so depressed. I was so upset. I don't even remember that 6-month period of my life. I remember I have flashes, and one vivid memory I have is sitting on the sofa being so high. I was nodding out, watching a movie with my dad. That's like all I remember. And then, I do remember I was leaving an appointment with a psychiatrist, and we were listening to the radio live at the Boston Marathon, and that's when the bombing happened. So I remember that. Those are the two memories I have of that entire 6-month period of my life. But fast forward a little bit, I had to do an internship for my program. So I ended up going to Oklahoma for the summer to do an internship. And I remember, that was the first time I had withdrawals, because my connection was cut off. I didn't even know what withdrawals were. Right. I had known, I knew what the word withdrawal meant. I knew like, what it means, like in a sense to be in withdrawal, but I didn't know like, and I'm 30, but it's still kind of sad because I grew up in that time period where addiction is still looked at as a choice, as a mental a weakness. It's not a disease, it's a weakness. You chose to do this. This is your choice. So I was just always under the, I just had the perception that, I'm not an addict because I don't not have a choice. I don't not have a choice in this. It's something that I can put down whenever I want and not suffer consequences of stopping. And I had no idea that I was going to be on the bathroom floor, shaking, curled up in the fetal position, and not being able to sleep for weeks. My back, everything hurting. And so I remember to this day, I called my dad and I said, Dad, I think, because I had already had, health issues the previous year, I just kind of like attributed it to that. I had no idea, I'm like, something wrong. My back is killing me. I can't even lay in bed comfortably. I can't sleep, I was like, will you please have, your doctor friend write me a prescription for painkillers? And I think in my head, I knew what I was doing, but I didn't want to admit it to myself. Because I think I had caught on like, you're sick, like you're dope sick, like you need to, like, because but you just don't fully process it in the moment.
You don't want to.
Yeah, no, you don't want to accept that that truth at the moment. So he, it happened. He was able to get the doctor to write it and fill it and mailed it to me. And I think it lasted probably about 3 or 4 days. And, luckily I was getting out of there soon. It wasn't too long of a summer, but I do remember I went to a doctor with that bottle, and this became my MO. I went to the doctor with that bottle and said, I just moved here, I'm here for the summer. I ran out. And they would just look at it and say, okay, you have existing medical conditions, like let's good to go, write the prescription. And I did that once, and then I went back, I finished that prescription, and I went back to a different doctor because it was like an urgent care place. And then I went back to another doctor, and I remember him bringing up the PDMP. And I didn't know what the PDMP was at the time. And he was like, so what about these who just got filled like a week ago or 2 weeks ago from this other doctor? And I was like, I don't know. That's not me. I played dumb.
Right.
And this is the baffling part, is he still wrote the prescription.
That's unbelievable.
Still wrote the prescription, still gave it to me. I went and filled it. Pharmacist filled it, didn't say anything, but this was back before the PDMP was like super heavy use. It was starting to catch on in a lot of states, but I don't think doctors in a lot of places were required to check it by law. And, Massachusetts now, you can't even, get like a Z-Pack without them checking the PDMP. So it's a different day and age, even though it was only a couple years ago.
I know. And I mean, this is just my opinion, but I still think that doctors, not all doctors, but some doctors have a lot to answer for. Oh, I mean, they were handing that stuff out like candy, like.
Absolutely. And I'll get to.
Oh wait, he should have written you that prescription.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely should not have written me that prescription. Down the line, I had a lot of doctors who did write me prescriptions for legitimate reasons, for legitimate chronic pain, but I was using it to fuel my addiction at the time.
Right.
But I know that those doctors weren't trying to turn a profit or, do anything other than help me. And
right.
I thank them for that. I'm the one that has to answer for my actions and my manipulations and my lies.
Oh, yeah.
They were just trying to help me. And I totally understand that. But yes, no, that doctor should never have written me that prescription.
No. And right. I was like, even if doctors are lining up to hand me, it's still my addiction. It's still my responsibility.
Absolutely. And I think I was like only like 22 or 23 at the time. So he was like, I wasn't like hobbling in there with a cane or, with a walker or a broken leg or anything. It was just like, oh, okay, sure. Here you go. Because I had the existing bottle, and you would be surprised how often that worked. But that came to an end, and, or it was coming to an end, my time there. And I had been in contact with my school, and all of a sudden they were like, yeah, this just isn't going to work out. Like, they were basically firing me, essentially. And my old boss had heard what happened, and she called me and she was like, I don't think this is right. What they have done's wrong. Like, you were going through a lot. You sat there and you just spent a summer doing your internship to go back to this program, and they're here telling you now, no, you can't. Like, I still had stuff on campus in my room. Like, I still, had all this, and they were like, no, you, and she was like, that's not right. She's like, this was a student affairs program. So it was very much like, mental health focused, personal growth focus. If you need time, you take the time. I even had my like academic advisor, who was the dean of the program, telling them this is wrong. Like, we told him to leave. We asked him to leave, and so he could focus on himself. And so she was like, this is wrong. I want you to come work for me. I have a position open, doing the same exact thing, essentially. So I jumped at the offer to move to Las Vegas. Keep in mind, I'm also still, for the most part, closeted at this moment. I'm still in the closet with my family. I have not told them I'm gay. I was starting to kind of come out on campus a little bit because I had never seen, like I said, South Carolina, small private religious, but a liberal arts liberal arts school that I was going to. But there was never like, there was never any overt hate on campus. Like, my undergrad, there was a gay straight alliance and all that. And it was a religious school, but we didn't have to go to church. We didn't have to do, you had to take New Testament and Old Testament, and there were survey courses. And the professors were like, hey guys, listen, this is just a history class. I'm not here to push this on you, so that was real. It was a great, great thing as somebody who was closeted, a closeted budding addict, hiding one secret and then having a whole nother secret on the side,
Which
so
probably added to the stress.
Absolutely.
Added to the exacerbated your addiction.
Absolutely. It definitely fueled it. And it fueled it in a weird way, in the sense that lying has always been a defense mechanism for me. I have had to lie to protect myself, not only, emotionally and mentally, but physically, from external factors and things like that, so hiding who I was and lying and being deceitful and manipulating, that was a part of my defense mechanism. I wasn't using it to gain anything other than my own safety, or to ensure my own safety. So I had perfected those things over the years, which is a really dangerous thing for an addict or a budding addict to have in their skill set.
Yep.
So, at this point in my life, I decide, like it's time. I still remember the day it happened. I had been in Las Vegas for a couple weeks at that time. First thing I did, try and find a drug dealer, try and find someone to buy drugs from, try and find, so that was like super healthy on my part. And then I still remember I went to there was a gay pool party every Sunday at the Luxor. And I went there, I used my debit card that I shared an account with my father. Because I'm only like 23 at this point, I just moved across the country. I just moved to Las Vegas. Like, he wanted to be able to make sure I had money, so I had used a debit card at
you and your dad?
No. My mom,
okay.
Like my mom is, my mom and dad are still together. They've been together for 40 plus years. I also have an older brother too. And he, my brother is an awesome guy. He's, but here I am, the gay son, the addict son, like I like to,
in Las Vegas.
Yeah, in Las Vegas. I said, I like to make the joke that I really wanted to kick my parents while they were down a little bit, but yeah, so I used my debit card there one day, and my mom is like master detective. She wants a why, a when, a where, and a how for everything, and a who for everything. And even at 23, like I'm like, oh my gosh. So like, she just did a little Googling and found it was a gay pool party. And she's like, what were you doing there? And I was like, we got to have a talk. So it kind of, it came out, I came out. It was a little rough at first.
That's good. The first thing I think, what were you doing there? Research?
Yeah. Yeah. I stumbled in.
Oh no!
Yeah, I just stumbled in. Yeah, but I was tired of hiding it. Like I said, I had a whole nother secret on my plate at this point, and I was tired of hiding it.
One had to go.
Yeah, one had to go. It was too much. So that one had to go. And honestly, it was one of the greatest things in my life. And I'm so proud. I'm so happy with who I am today. I wouldn't change it for anything, but it was weird kind of being forced on me, but at the same time, like, I knew it was time. I wanted it. I was grateful for that experience and grateful for that situation. It was a little rough at first with them. They were like, well, we don't know how supportive we are going to be or can be. You're still our son. We love you. We're going to help you, but we can't say that we are going to be okay with you bringing, another man home for Christmas or for Thanksgiving or all that yet. And this is coming from the same woman who just called me a few weeks ago and is like, do you think we have enough presents for your boyfriend, like my boyfriend, John? Like, do you think we have enough presents for him? Or do we have, why isn't he coming? Like, he needs to be, Like, why are you spending 2.5 days with his family and, only 2 days with us? And I'm like, we got to do what we got to do. So it's funny to see how it's changed.
Mhm.
I'm super grateful for that in my life. But yeah, I came out, I was instantly, thrusted myself into, the nightlife scene and the gay nightlife scene, because there are two different ones in Las Vegas. And I loved it. I was having a lot of fun. It was a lot of drinking, not so much like heavy, hard drugs or anything, but um, I met a guy. He was a promoter for the gay bars and some straight bars, like the mega clubs in Vegas. And he was like the it man, to get everything, you wanted. And that included drugs. And, we at first had a lot of fun together. Relationship turned really toxic. But the main point behind this is that I still remember his mother lived like in a completely different part of Nevada,
Mhm.
and would drive down once a month to bring him her painkiller prescription to sell. And he would always break me off some, give me some and then sell the rest. I had already stumbled upon a doctor and had an active prescription at this time. So he knew that. He knew I was taking them. I had convinced him it was for legitimate purposes, and he went along with it at first and would always give me some and then sell the rest. And it just became a really bad relationship. It was super toxic. I think we were both mentally unstable at that point in our lives. He was a little bit older than me. I think he was 30. I was 23,
Mhm.
23, 24. And we were both just kind of mentally unstable. And it just wasn't a good mix. And I still remember to this day, I had gotten to a point where I just couldn't be with him anymore. We'd made the agreement that if either one of us was ever unhappy, that we would just part ways, because I'm not going to be the source of someone's misery, and I don't want anybody else to be a source of my misery.
Mhm.
And I had blocked him on all fronts. My mother and father had to block him on all fronts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it got to that point.
So he's kind of cocky.
Yeah. He liked to keep tabs on me, to say the least. And which is very easy to do. Vegas is a big city, but it's a small town at the same time.
Yeah, I've heard
especially in especially in the gay community. But I still remember the day where someone who was a mutual friend of ours was like, he has written a letter to your parents, to mail it to them, like snail mail it, because that was the only way that he could like get in touch with them. And it was this awful, nasty letter, just full of horrible, hateful things. But I will never forget the one line that stuck out to me. And I hope this does not get you in trouble on YouTube or any other platform, but he said, "Your son is a little drug addicted F word."
Mhm.
And I was like, that's a real bold statement coming from the drug dealer who
Selling
was,
his mom's prescription.
selling your mother's prescription, but breaking me off a piece and selling it to a woman who told you it was for her sick child, when you never seen the child, you never met the child. She only comes over at like midnight, and she rushes back down to her car and then gets out of there. I said, I'm the addict here. Let's be honest. I know what she's doing. Like it it just
Calling you a gay slur.
yeah,
Kind of like,
exactly. And then telling that to my parents as you are giving them to me and feeding them to me and not charging, not doing, just giving them to me,
yeah,
and
that's a
being a part of the problem.
bit hypocritical. I
Yeah,
feel.
that was a real bold move. so I was dealing with a lot at that point in time in my life. I had just changed jobs. I had a great career at this time. This is like right after all this happened. I got a new job working at one of the casinos, and I was like in like the catering and events department and all that. So I wasn't like on the casino floor or like, serving drinks and whatnot, but it's a culture, you know. And but I was thriving. I was the functioning addict. I hate that term, but I was the functioning addict. That's how I looked at myself.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, that's what we are. It's like we somehow, it's not, just to clarify for people, functioning isn't, my car is functioning. That's a good thing. Me being a functioning addict, not a good thing. It would actually be better if I couldn't function, because then I probably would have gotten help faster.
absolutely. And I say I was functioning because I got to the point where I was in the best shape of my life. I had been promoted twice while I was taking naps on my lunch break because I was so high. Like in the spare office taking a nap because I was so high. Going to the doctor every 3 weeks to get my refills. Running out of those and then going to my dealer who was sick on dialysis. He just didn't take the pill, he'd sell them to me. So I was always justifying it. Well, he needs the money. He's selling them to me for a really good price. It's okay, right? That line goes back a little further. Yeah, I'm helping him and he's helping me,
It's symbiotic.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it just started to get to a point where I was having to call and ask my parents for money. My bills were paid, but I didn't have money left over for what I needed. My drugs. So they would give me a little bit of money. They, no suspicions at this point, not saying anything. So they'd give it to me, $100. Here's $150, to get you through to the week or, whatever, for gas and stuff. And it got to a point where I had applied for another promotion at work. I didn't get it. They had ended up hiring someone they told me I was not mature enough for the job yet because it was a higher up management position. They ended up hiring somebody the same age as me who wasn't even from Las Vegas or didn't even live in Las Vegas. And I'd been at the same hotel for 2 years or a year and a half at this point and knew it in and out. And, they told me I wasn't mature enough, but then they brought somebody the same age as me who had no food and bev, no hospitality experience. And so that was like a big ego blow to me. I hated where I was living. I was ready to come home. The well was getting dry. And that considered on all fronts, the doctors, I think, were starting to get a little suspicious. The walls were closing in a little too quickly and I didn't like that. So I cut and run. So I moved back to South Carolina with my family. And then for like a hot second, then I moved Charleston, South Carolina and end up working in food and bev there and, making really good money once again, but literally almost every cent of that went to drugs. I was having to buy the pills off the street at this point because I hadn't established a doctor, hadn't done my normal routine. I hadn't gotten those resources yet. So I was, the cost of drugs is astronomical when they're pills, because I hadn't crossed that line yet. But it was astronomical. I was probably spending upward of $1,000 a week on pills. So that had to stop quick. So I did my old little plan. I took my medicine bottles my old medicine bottles and showed them to the doctor. And the first doctor I met wrote me one prescription and she was like, okay, we're gonna have to be careful with this. We're gonna have to, she was super responsible. I came in there the next month. She wasn't there because she just had surgery. And this was like a urgent care, but also a primary care place, but they had multiple locations all around the area. And a girl at the front desk, legitimately trying to help me once again, was like, here's the name of a doctor at our other clinic today. He's at this clinic one day a week. He's at this clinic most of the time though. He will write you a prescription. Once again, just trying to help me, but bad information with really good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
And went over there, got whatever I wanted, essentially. And so that plan, worked out for a while. And then I still remember the day I went in and he was like, all right, they're not going to let us write these prescriptions anymore. He was like, I'm going to give you a month's worth, and then I want you to go see a pain management doctor. And I was like, oh no, I can't do that, because then they're going to know I don't have aside from, one medical condition, they're not going to know that they're going to take images. They're going to do this. They're not going to see that I have a true reason for this chronic pain. So obviously I never did that and just went back to the streets. And that's, progressive disease. It picks up where you left off. At this point, I never stopped. I didn't leave off, but it was even worse, so the money was even more so than the first time. So I got to a point where I couldn't even pay my rent. I still didn't think I had that much of a problem. It just, in my mind, was, it is what it is, it's a hard realization to come to. And I moved back in with my parents and found a doctor close to where I was living, and he did primary care and pain management. And this was the doctor who started me on the OxyContin, the famous wonder drug.
Mm-hmm.
This point, they were already the new kind or whatever, but I didn't care because it kept me from not being sick. But I also got a couple of the non-time release, and I was, cutting them up anyway, cutting them in half and, chewing them up and swallow, trying to break the time release anyway at this point. So it didn't really matter. I was abusing them anyway.
Right.
So during this time, I ended up meeting my current boyfriend, who's still my boyfriend. By the grace of God, I don't know how he has put up with all this. He has the patience of a saint. And that's how I always say, that's how I know he truly loves me. Because he's still here. I would be gone. I would have been gone a while ago. But we end up moving to Florida. You can probably hear him in the background. He's playing video games with his friends. But we end up moving to Florida. And as most addicts know, as most opiates and pharmaceutical addicts know, Florida tends to be the holy grail, when you're in this type of situation. And I moved to Florida. I find a really good doctor. And I say really good doctor because he really did care about me, and he really did care about my situation. Anything that happened, he was super, always wanting to help, always had an appointment available for me, took really good care of me, in terms of me feeding my addiction, but also as my healthcare provider as well.
Right.
He legitimately was trying to help. He was making nothing but my copay and my insurance, there was nothing extra. He wasn't getting kickbacks. But I had been changing jobs a couple of times. And I remember I got a new insurance plan. And I'm going to say the name of the company because I think it deserves to be known. And if you have to edit it out, I totally get it. But I was put on a Humana insurance plan through my work. And they did not want to cover the OxyContin. Of course, not a lot of people do. Understandable. It's very, very expensive. There was no generic or, non-name brand alternative at the time.
Right.
And so it was super expensive. They didn't want to cover it. So they were like, all right, he has to be put on the Xtampza, which I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's like a new one now, and it's supposed to be like ultra abuse deterrent, abuse proof.
Use
It
proof.
comes, yeah, it comes in weird milligrammed, you know, it comes in, it's oxycodone technically. But it comes in like a weird milligram, you know, conversion and all this stuff. And I mean, the pills were horse pills. They were literally, you know, that big. I mean, huge. You had to eat them with a special diet, you know, all this stuff. You had to take them at a certain time of day. They just, you know, they weren't working for me as an addict, but they weren't working at the same time for the regular amount of chronic pain that I did have. It was an awful drug. It made me super sick. It was just terrible. Not sick in the sense of like withdrawal, like it makes your stomach like horrible drug. So they had me on, this was the decision of Humana's, by the way, 436 milligrams, which would be equal to 4 OxyContin 40 milligrams a day. Because it was that bad. Like the drug was that, like, if you didn't eat properly, you didn't absorb it. So they were like, just up the dose,
Right.
you know, like, you know. And so it got to the point where I was like, listen, I can't afford this medication. You know, it's getting to be expensive at 4 a day. The addict in me was saying, I'm not getting high. I hate this. You know, the small little rational person that was inside of me, you know, still very little at the time though, was like, this just isn't working. You know, you're gonna hurt yourself, or you're gonna get put on the radar, or something's gonna happen. You know, so I went back to the doctor and I was like, this is incontinent. So he has to get on the phone with the medical director of Humana, the man who makes, like, if you have an appeal about a prior auth or anything like that, this goes to him. And if, you know, he's the one who makes the ultimate decision on this. He was a pain management physician and had transferred over into this position at Humana. You know, I guess had been hired, promoted. His solution was to put me on 100 microgram an hour fentanyl patches, and then provide me with, I believe it was 90 or 120 oxycodone 20 milligrams a month. That was his solution.
Wow.
So my doctor was like, if you say so, you know, like, he's opioid tolerant, he's having issues, you know, like, once again, just trying to help me.
Right. Now, do we know if this guy, not your doctor, but the guy from Humana, was he a older gentleman? Because if he was old school, I mean, that might have.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think I did end up like Googling his name because they had provided me his name. Because it was such a debacle trying to get everything worked out and approved and done and handled. Because they didn't want to cover any medication. My doctor was like, what about this? What about that? And they're like, no. So I'm assuming they put me on this because, one, you know, fentanyl patches, when they're generic, are pretty cheap. You know, they're a fairly cheap drug. You get usually a box of 10, one patch lasts for 3 days, you know, so that's 30 days worth of medication. It's only like 100 micrograms as high as they go. It's open source, so any company can make it. And like, it's like $100 for a box of 10, you know. So I'm assuming they were looking out for the bottom line. And at that point in time, you know, to the generic, you know, oxycodone, whatever, it was cheap. I had become too expensive for them with my other medications, and now it's having to take this brand name drug that cost me, you know, $60, $70 out of pocket, was costing them almost $600, $700 every month that I had to fill it. So he was super eager to get me off of that. And it just goes to show, once again, you know, I understand they have a job to do, but their job easily could have killed me. Even if I
just hit the, you know, opioid addict jackpot.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I was, I probably stuck to, took them as prescribed the first couple days. Put the patch on, you leave it on 3 days, you take it off at about 2.5 days, 2.25 days, put a new one on, and then take the others as needed. So I probably did that for about 2 or 3 days until I would put a patch on, take another patch out of the box, cut it. And, a popular way, I don't want to, put this out there too much, but I think it is common knowledge among addicts. A popular way to abuse the fentanyl patches was to, put them in your mouth.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it used to be they were patches, but it was like a square kind of box and it had the gel in it.
Right.
And people used to take the gel out and abuse it that way. It's not like that anymore. It's like a sticker. It's just like a foggy, looking sticker, and you can put it on.
Like the new nicotine patches.
Exactly. It looks just like a nicotine patch. And it looks just like a nicotine patch, but you can still do that the same way. And I had discovered how to do that, obviously online forums and things like that. Do not do that if you're watching this. But do not do that. Yeah, it will kill you. It will kill you because in that 100 micrograms an hour through my skin, that one patch had 11 milligrams of fentanyl, which 1 milligram of fentanyl is enough to kill somebody.
Yep.
I mean, there are stories that I would read online of women or people. This one just happened to be a woman who was prescribed the patches. She took it off, threw it in the trash can, and her child got a hold of it. And the child OD'd and died.
Oh, God.
So they tell you, it says it in the thing, do not throw this in the trash can.
Yeah, as a mother, my heart is...
Yeah, put it in the toilet, flush it down the toilet. A lot of people don't realize either, heat activates those. So another popular way people abuse them is they put them on and they heat themselves up. And a lot of people, there was another story I read of a woman who put one on her hip, and she got into bed with a heating pad, and she was already partially opioid tolerant, and she died. She overdosed and died. Because she had a heating pad on.
Yeah.
And
fentanyl is one of the most deadly, if not the deadliest drug.
Absolutely. Really, and the awful part about it is, I think I read somewhere in an article, some scholarly article, that it's used so much in hospitals and medical settings because in those settings, it's actually the safest. Believe it or not, it has the highest setting. Yeah, it has the highest therapeutic, one of the highest therapeutic windows or but on the street, when you don't know what you're getting, or when you have a patch with 11 milligrams of it in one, it's super dangerous.
Yeah. And there's nobody there regulating it. You're not under medical supervision.
Exactly. And so it's two different worlds, but I was like, it just blew my mind that, it's all about the setting, and it's all about the person, and it's all about, what's going on. So I, this is going on for about a year. We lived in Florida for about almost 2 years. This is going on for about a year and a half when I was down there. And mind you, at this time, I was going to the methadone clinic when I would run out. So I was double dipping at the methadone clinic, and
because you actually did have chronic pain.
Yes, I did. And this is the part
on top of withdrawal, your pain is coming back.
So before this doctor, the one that worked with the insurance company to do all that, I'm sorry, I left this part out. I completely forget about it all the time. I had gone to a pain management doctor, and he ordered x-rays because I came in, once again, my old MO, I came in with all these bottles, and he was like, this is some, you're on some high doses here, and he was like, I can't just do all this. He's like, I'll write you the prescription this month because I don't want you to go into withdrawal. I understand that you're dependent. I passed my drug screen, obviously. I wasn't using anything off the street at this time. He's like, but I have to do imaging. So I went and got an x-ray done, and he was like, did you know that you have scoliosis? I was like, no, I didn't. And he was like, yeah, you have dextroscoliosis, meaning it curves to the right, and your thoracic spine, so in the upper part of my spine. And I was like, no idea. No idea. I had been, bounced around from doctors to doctors, for years, one, feeding my addiction, but two, also trying to get a little bit of relief. That relief turned into an addiction. But the addictive property, the addictive personality, habits, behavior, those were all there before, all this happened anyway. So I don't blame my chronic pain on my addiction in any way. I don't, it's me. I understand that I'm the problem. But yeah, he had explained that to me, and then that was when my insurance changed, and he wasn't covered under that insurance anymore. So that's when I told that doctor, my primary care, and he just started, taking care of me. He started taking care of the prescriptions, just continued what he was writing. Once again, just in an attempt to help.
Right.
And so I still remember, so I was doing this, I was double dipping at the methadone clinic. That was always my backup plan. I would go there for about 2 weeks out of the month or a week out of the month, and then just disappear from the radar for a while. And they would call me, and they would, but they only checked the PDMP the first time you come in the door. They don't continuously check it on the outside, or, when you're getting care. So I would go in there when I ran out, or when I knew I was going to be sick, or when I, whatever the situation may be. And so I had two different sources at this point. And I'll never forget the day that I met somebody at the clinic, and he was there legitimately trying to get clean, and then he relapsed, and then it just turned into doing the same thing that I was doing. And he had a dealer who was selling fentanyl dope. What I just call it dope, because we don't know what it is.
Right.
I don't think there's actually real heroin out there anymore.
There isn't real anything out there anymore.
Yeah, so I just call it dope because
drugs have always been dangerous. They are so much more dangerous now than they have ever been.
Absolutely. I mean, all these basement chemists and chemists, but I call it dope. That's just encompassing of everything, essentially, in my mind. And I remember one day I had ran out. I couldn't get an appointment or anything, or it was too early, and I didn't want to go to the clinic, or because I couldn't, because you can only go at a certain time period. And I was like, what can you get me? And in Florida, it's all in little veggie caps, so it looks like a little pill. They come in like a little pill, and $20, and you do with it as you may, whenever you walk away. And I just remember the day that happened, and I was like, that was when I was like, shit, I'm in trouble. It got to the point where I was every morning before meet the guy, every day after work going to meet the guy, for whatever, just to get me through until I could either get to the clinic, get a prescription refilled, or whatever. And then that turned into a daily thing.
Right.
And I remember it even got to a point where it was so bad that when we couldn't get a hold of him, me and this other person, because we would communicate, we would communicate about, hey, have you heard from him? Have you, if he wasn't answering one of our phone calls or whatever, we would check the crime blotter, to see if he got arrested.
Make sure.
Yeah, to see if he got arrested, and be like, all right, what are we going to have to do? We're addicts, we're resourceful.
Right. Now, does your boyfriend know what's going on at all?
He has an idea. He has an idea.
What's his name? Tell me his name again.
His name's John.
John. Okay, so does John know?
Yeah. No, he does not know. He has an idea, but he does not know. He hasn't said anything to me about it yet. It got to the point where he, I still had my own paychecks coming in. I had my going to my account, doing this, doing that. So I was able to do that. But it got to a point where he was like, babe, like, you're not giving me any money to help pay the rent or pay the bills. Like, what's happening to your paycheck?
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know. It's
crazy.
Gas is super expensive right now. So
I kind of derailed you anyway.
Idea.
So you're checking crime blotter.
Yeah. So, but I mean, no, that's an important part that you mentioned, because no, he didn't. And it got to a point where I was having to either give him a certain amount of money every payday, which I got paid every week. Either give it that to him that day, like right then and there, whenever it first hit my account, or I had the option of just letting my paycheck go to his direct deposit so he could pay our rent and buy groceries and get normal people things, everyday life things. And so I was like, well, no, I cannot have that, because then I won't have any money at all. So I just bit the bullet and started doing what I had to do, to try and make it last or get by. And if I ran out of money and I had to ask for $20, I was not getting that $20. I was not getting that $40. If I had to all of a sudden run out and grab something I left at work or go to the store for something or whatever, I'll go with you. No, you're not going. Give me the keys.
Mm-hmm.
It got to that point. So he knew it was going. We had just never said the word addiction,
right.
Addicts, things like that. So at this point, like you said, it's kind of coming to a head, but it's still it's walking on eggshells at the moment. And we're checking the crime blotter. Back to the crime blotter.
Right.
checking the crime blotter. Like I said, it got to that point where we were like checking the crime blotter to see, oh my gosh, has our dealer been arrested? And sure enough, one day he had been. But anyone who knows anything about how the game works, that don't mean he's gone.
Right. Right.
You just pass the phone off. You pass the phone off to the next one in line. It's the contingency plan. And that's what happened. So it's not like it affected me that much. We genuinely liked the guy, so we felt bad for him, but it was what it was. And so at this point, like I said, we're still in Florida. My boyfriend had just gotten a call about the job that he currently has in Boston. So he's like, what do you think about this? And my response was fueled by two different parts of my brain. There was the part of me that let me say three parts. There was a part of me that would never say no to my boyfriend pursuing his dream career and his dream job and, helping to give us a better life.
Mm-hmm.
There's the part of me that did not want to leave what I had going on down there, because I knew I had, like you said, hit the cash cow of, addict's paradise. And there, and where we were living, there are hundreds of rehab clinics, houses, sober houses around us, where they were just feeding these kids and these people drugs in order to charge their health insurance and run fake, so it was everywhere around us. And there's part of me that didn't want to leave what I had going. Then the other part was, I knew how bad things were in the Northeast, in New England and in Massachusetts with the opioid epidemic. And I knew that doctors would not prescribe what I was being prescribed in Florida. I knew that I'd have to go to the streets, and I knew that I would have to start almost probably using dope, fentanyl, whatever, exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
And that was scary to me. That scared me. But like I said, I would never say no to him, but I couldn't say no to him for those reasons,
right.
Because we hadn't talked about, we didn't got to that point yet. So my amazing doctor, like I said, like he did, he wrote me 3 months of my prescriptions. I had already Googled what the laws were in Massachusetts and knew that I could not fill them here. So I took them to the pharmacy. I got my first month right then and there, and left the other 2 on file and with the pharmacy. And I would call my friends after the month came up and ask them, hey, do you mind going by the pharmacy and picking up my meds for them? You know, not knowing, thinking, or ever even kind of considering that they would open the bag and kind of look what's in there. I don't know if this friend ever did. I still haven't asked him that question, but he would
Right.
just mail it to me. And I want to say he did, because it got to the point where he was like, I can't do this anymore. And I don't know if he looked in the bag, or I don't know if it just became such a headache, because he did
Right.
run into some roadblocks of, having to go there, me sending him the money, put it in the mail. He was just not one. He was just fed. This is too much of a chore. So I don't know. I never knew what actually, drove him to that decision. But, so that ended. And when that ended, I still remember the first day I made my trek down to Mass Ave, or what we call the methadone mile. So for everyone watching, the methadone mile, where there's a couple methadone clinics, but there's also a homeless camp there that the city has set up. It's a shelter, but there's a camp that they call the tent, which now has a safe use and injection site attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally needles and trash that litter the street in this area. They're literally, anybody who works in that area carries Narcan around their neck. It is right next to the biggest, BMC, Boston Medical Center, which is the biggest safety net hospital in the state. But it's a rough area, and it's a high drug area that they just kind of let it happen, because if it's contained down there, it's not happening in the rest of the city. And you can walk down the street and people will just yell Tina Brown, hard at you, and either try and scam you, rob you, or legitimately sell you something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like an open air drug market. And I still remember the first day that I went down there, me, this gay, clean cut white boy walking down there, and I end up meeting somebody who connects me with what I need, and a relationship started from there. And I was going back down there almost every day for the rest of the time until I got sober about 60 days ago. And that's when it really started to spiral. The words addiction were finally uttered. The word addict was finally uttered. I was calling people to come meet me outside of my apartment to bring me stuff. I was I was doing everything, because it got to a point where my boyfriend would not even let me leave the apartment without him. And I was telling my parents and my boyfriend that I was going to the methadone clinic down there, because obviously there are methadone clinics down there. They would give me money to go to the methadone clinic down there. I would make fake receipts from the methadone clinic to show them that I was, going to the clinic when I wasn't. And, it got to a point where I was hating myself. I was hating who I was. I was hating who I had become. He was taking all of my money from me. My paycheck would go directly into his account. I would get no money. I would certainly not get cash. I would certainly not get cash for gifts. Nothing like that. And that led me to start doing things out of desperation. I was shoplifting to feed my habit. I was manipulating to feed my habit. I was stealing from my family. I was stealing from my friends. I was manipulating people. I was pawning my stuff
Mm-hmm.
to feed my habit. And it really hit, my life hit probably the lowest point. I remember it was my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. They were in South Carolina, we were here, and I had gone into detox that Friday or Thursday. And the place I went was free, because it was like a Department of Health kind of deal, Department of Public Health kind of deal, where if you go, and don't have insurance, it's free. I didn't have insurance at the time, and it was an awful, awful place. It was during COVID, so you were not allowed to leave your room except for smoke break and for vitals and meds. And they brought you your meals in your room. You couldn't do anything. But in terms of care, the facility, it was terrible. It was disgusting. I lasted 2 days there before I was begging my boyfriend. What was that?
I said, I can imagine.
Oh yeah. I lasted 2 days, and surprisingly, I wasn't that sick. I thought I was going to be much sicker. And the day I left, my paycheck hit part that I was skimming, because you could do like a percentage, hit my account. And I called my boyfriend. He's like, I'm not coming to get you. You have to stay. You have to stick it out. Because I know I'm leaving. Like, I'm sorry, I have to go. Like, you have no idea. Which I think I would have legitimately left regardless, but it just made it easier. So I remember hopping on. He wouldn't come get me, so I hopped on a blue bike. Rented a little blue bike, rode like the mile down to the tent, and met my dealer, and bought what I needed to buy. In the meantime, somebody tried to steal my blue bike, which is a $1,200 fine. $1,200 if you don't return the blue bike. And I was like, I cannot do this. So ended up getting an argument with this dude who was pretty significantly larger than me, and also detoxing at the moment. He was in withdrawal at the moment. He certainly wasn't trying to detox.
Right.
But he ended up chasing me down the street with a piece of rebar on this bike. Me on this bike, him chasing me with a piece of rebar. And did what I had, wasn't satisfied. Called my friend, she gave me some money. I went and got it. I went back to my dealer, and I decided that I was going to let somebody use a needle on me for the first time that day. And they did. And I think my rock part, one of my rock bottoms was being 2 days out of detox, sitting on the sidewalk of Mass Ave with a needle in my arm, letting a stranger do this to me, and not even liking it. I never went back. I'd never used a needle before. I never went back to it because I hated it. I hate needles, but I hated the entire experience of it all. And I'm grateful that I'm grateful that I had that experience, because it scared me away from it for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And it still wasn't enough to stop me. I had 20 days sober after that. And then I went to the beach with my boyfriend's family. And after that, I had made the decision on the plane ride before we'd even landed that I was going to relapse. And I went and I bought and went on about a 2 or 3 month run. And it got to a point where it was every day I was having to do something for money or get money, or was getting extremely sick. And it got to a point where I made an agreement with my family that I could get into detox and rehab on November 10th, 2020. But in exchange for that, they had to give me money each day for me to not be sick, to get me there. I said, listen, I'm willing to go. I want to go. I want to end all this. I hate this life.
Right.
So they did that. And I know we talk about enabling, but at that point it was, we just have to keep
It
him
was
alive
maintenance.
long
Yeah.
enough. Yeah, we just have to keep him alive long enough and out of jail, long enough to get to rehab. And I'm super grateful that my parents did that, because I probably would have ended up doing some really stupid things in order to get money. And mind you, at this point in time too, my mother had contacted all of my friends,
Hmm.
anybody that knew me, anybody I had a relationship with that she knew I knew within probably the past 15 years of my life, and told them, I have a problem, I'm sick, I'm an addict, do not give me money. Because that was part of my MO, is I would lie to my friends in order to
Hmm.
get money and manipulate money out of them. And I hate that I did things like that, and I'm gonna have to make up for it for the rest of my life. But I take responsibility for what I did, and I always tell everybody, I used to look at things like being gay as like this curse. When I was younger, I used to cry myself to sleep, begging and praying for God to take it away. And I did the same thing with my addiction. I used to cry myself to sleep and beg God to take it away. Like, why me? Why am I going, what did I do to deserve this? And I used to look at those things in my life as being a curse. And now I look at them as blessings.
Right.
Because I would not be who I am today without those. I am a proud gay man, and I'm also a recovering addict, and I love that about
Hmm.
myself. Like, I am stronger than ever because of all those horrible things that I went through. Those curses have turned out to be the biggest blessings in my life, and I would never wish either of them away. I wish some of the things I did in my active addiction never happened, but do I wish my addiction never happened? No, absolutely not. Because without my addiction, I would have never been able to find my recovery.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I would, I wouldn't have this amazing story. I wouldn't be here talking to you. And I'm super grateful for things like that.
Yeah. And I notice, it's like on TikTok, for example, you are really reaching out to the LGBT plus community, and to support those who are who are in addiction and want to get into recovery, or are in recovery and want to hold on to that recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love TikTok. TikTok has saved my life. Yes, the facility I went to was phenomenal, and I got such great tools to help, fuel my recovery. However, because of COVID, because of all these things going on, all these, no in-person meetings, there's no fellowship. I get that from TikTok now. I
Mhm.
have met so many amazing people, including yourself, off of TikTok. And
The community
like,
is huge. The recovery
it's
community is so much bigger than people think.
massive. And it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful place. Like, there's still a little bit of the drama. There's still a little bit of judgment. You're always going to have that no matter what, no matter where you are. But it's like just constant love and support, and like things like that just don't happen even at meetings, and you know we don't have to hide who we are anymore, and I love that. I'm very much a proponent of recovering out loud. You know I said it in a TikTok the other day. It's like the worst thing about me has now become the best thing about me. Like, I am rigorously honest. I have integrity once again. Like, I have been through hell, but I made it out on the other side a much stronger person, and that's now my biggest and best quality.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm not going to do anything to screw it up. At least today, I'm not.
Right. Right. We'll worry about tomorrow, but for today,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. But yeah, and like you were saying about the LGBT community, and I know the algorithm is a beast, and I know that algorithm feeds you exactly what you want, which may be a dangerous thing for a bunch of recovering addicts. But
Right.
when we're all encouraging it, it's not. But I'm noticing so many LGBT people in recovery. And it's like, what is the connection here? You know, what is driving all of us to become addicts in the first place? I personally, I believe, you know, our brains are different. I believe it's something we're almost born with, you know, just like me being gay. You know, I believe it's something we're almost born with. You know, prime example, when I was at home at Christmas talking to my mom, I was explaining to her the long line of addiction that a friend I made in treatment, his family has, you know, suffers from. And, you know, I said, and then you got people like me where they ask me the same question, and I feel bad because it's like, no, I'm the only addict in my family. My mom goes, "You're not the only addict. What are you talking about?" And I was like, "No, what are you talking about?"
Right.
And she's like, "Well, your great grandmother, great grandfather were, you know, terrible alcoholics. Your mother, your grandmother's side of the family, her brothers are, one of them is a terrible alcoholic. Um, your dad's, your grandfather, who I never met, he died when my dad was 12, was pretty high up in the army." And she said, you know, my dad's mother, my grandmother, who passed away a couple years ago, my mom said had made comments to her about how he used to overdrink, and quite often, you know, this was back, this was a while ago. So, I mean, my dad's almost 70 now. He died when he was 12. So very different day and age. But like, even then, if
Right.
she was saying he had an issue then, you know, it's like, damn, this stuff would have been very helpful to know
Right.
growing up. And, you know, me deciding to experiment with things and do this and do that. And because I always knew, yeah, I knew alcoholism, you know, was genetic. You know, I knew you had a greater chance, but it's not things like pharmaceuticals, you know, and opiates and, you know, drugs in general. You know, you don't,
Right.
nobody
Right.
ever
Well, they
makes
don't
that
think about
connection.
that because when they started to realize this, you know, the big thing was dad, grandpa, whatever, you know, they drank. That's what it was. They drank. So it was alcoholism. And they didn't, you know, women hid it, or you didn't talk about women doing that. You know,
Yeah,
you notice AA
absolutely.
for the longest time, and NA were guys. It was guys. You know,
Yep.
women didn't start going, hey, me too. So they didn't, you know, they were just focusing on alcohol. But anything
Absolutely.
that will get you high, alcohol gets you high. We call it drunk. It's high.
And it's socially acceptable,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And that was, I think that's a big part of the problem too. And, you know, I was talking to a couple of people I was in treatment with, and I posed a really, what I call kind of a controversial question. You know, I asked in group one day, and I even made a TikTok about this too. And I asked, you know, I said, do alcohol, like, said, do y'all, the alcoholics in the room, look at us drug addicts after sharing a crazy story, you know, using puddle water or living on the side of the road for months or doing whatever, and think, thank God I'm not a drug addict? Because I will be honest and I'll tell you, I will look, you know, I will be in a room or in a group with alcoholics sometimes. Not that there's any different in an addict, but I'll say, thank God I'm not an alcoholic, not for those reasons, but because I don't think I could be as strong as you people are. You know, I don't think I could, you know, say no, knowing that I can legally walk down the street and get what I need, you know, get my vice and go to a party and it be expected of me. You know, I'm judged if I say no, not yes. You
Right.
know, it's, there's commercials about it. You know, if I was walking on the street and there were billboards for fentanyl, Percocet, painkiller, buy painkillers here with giant arrows, I can't say that I would still be, you know, sober to this day, or that I would ever even have made it out alive. So I have a lot of respect in that sense, because I could not be as strong as you are. You know, as you know, I have a lot of respect for you. I commend you. And that's what I always say. And then, you know, of course, you get the backlash of alcohol is a drug. Yes, I know that, but at the same time,
right, but you still don't have get painkillers here with giant arrows.
yeah, and I can't say that I can't say that I would be I can't say I'd be living a life of recovery if that were the case, and somebody I became very close with in treatment looked at me and he goes, absolutely we do. He said, absolutely we do. And it's no judgment, but it's a thank God that, you know, what you have had to put yourself through to feed your habit doesn't necessarily apply to my life. Not that it makes me any better or worse off, because this friend, he almost died from drinking. He was in the ICU for a week. He's like, not that it made, but I understand what you're saying 100%. And yeah, we do. But it's not in a judgmental way. It's in a way of compassion and sympathy and empathy, that one addict can have for another addict, and because my story, I grew up with given everything that I ever, needed or wanted. I wasn't spoiled by any means, but I never lacked.
Right.
And I still have the support of my parents to this day, which is baffling to me as well because of what I've put them through. But it just goes to show you that this disease does not discriminate. I sit in groups and meetings and listen to these people whose parents kicked them out at 13, or they left at 13, or they were living in a tent by the time they were 15, shoplifting just to eat, or,
right.
They're addicted by the time they're 17, and I, love to just go on and just say, thank you so much for that share. I'm so sorry that you've had to experience these things in your life, but I just want to let you know, I came from a completely opposite background. It doesn't make me any better or any worse because we're still here in the same exact boat.
Right. Because there are no nevers. People, oh, that'll never happen. I would never. That would never. There are no nevers. There are only not yets.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody said that to me in recovery. There are no nevers. There are only not yets.
The magic word, yets. And that's what I always tell everybody. And like when people are giving hate on TikTok and all that, I didn't have to do this. This is not what an addict looked like. This is not what I looked like in my active addiction. And I said, that's not what you looked like yet. That's not where, I say, you're always the functioning addict until you're not.
Yep. And
then you're just struggling and surviving.
Mm-hmm.
And that progression happens very quickly. Very quickly. And, I catch a lot of flack too, because I will openly, willingly, and not proudly, but like I said, I do this willingly and I have no reservations or qualms about it. I will call myself a junkie because I was doing junkie shit.
Yes, I do this.
I was doing junkie. Yeah, I was doing junkie shit to survive and to feed my addiction. And I have to remind myself of what I was and what I was doing and where I was at, because if I don't, I'll be back there. And, I always like to ask people, what do you call yourself? What do you do? What's the name that you call yourself? Because everyone's got something different. The term junkie is just one term that we have been given as addicts. But I always called myself the white collar junkie.
Mm-hmm.
I had a job.
I
had a job. I had an apartment. I had a place to live. I didn't have money because I wasn't even allowed to have money, but I had it,
right.
Just not given to me. I have a car, have all these things that, a junkie doesn't have. However, I'm having to go out and shoplift. I'm having to lie, manipulate, steal, and cheat to get money. I'm having to con. I'm having to rip people off. I'm having to sell this, pawn this, do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I have all these things. So that doesn't, no, that doesn't make me any better.
Right. I honestly, I kid you not. Now, remember, we're going on 6 years in February.
So awesome.
I thought that I was better than these women because I didn't trick. That's all I didn't do.
Yeah.
I mean, like, really? Because
And
you did everything else.
You know,
But your
that is,
story and my story have a lot of parallels. I came from a kind of, like my parents never stopped supporting me. I was a career woman. My husband dated and married me through my addiction into my recovery. And I'm always like, I would
same with
have
him.
dumped
Yeah.
me. I would have dumped me. Like,
Yeah.
what? Yeah, I was functional. I was very white collar junkie. And it wasn't until later that I was like, huh, I am exactly like her, whether I was
Absolutely.
transfixed or not. I
Yeah.
would have eventually, I bet, because there are no nevers.
Only yets. Yeah. And I mean, that's something I do take, you know, not turning, not turning. That's not what I'm saying. I take pride in the fact that like I never like, I've been with same situation. I've been with my boyfriend. You're at least the entire time that we've been together, I've been actively using.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big fear of mine is if I get sober, is he going to still love me? Is he still going to like me? Am I going to have the same personality? Am I going to, you know, is this going to last? Because the first time I tried to get sober and just white knuckled it for those 20 days, I was not a nice person. And I was already detoxed. I was not a nice person when I came out. And we were out at dinner one night and um, I had one drink, I was just kind of sipping on it, not really fully committed to being sober. I was sober. I was not recovering.
Right.
And I was sober. I was not recovering. He's like, I know you're miserable, but I just want to say I'm proud of you. I love you. Thank you. And I was like, I looked at him and I was like, you know what? You're right. I am friggin' miserable. I think I said a not so nice word, but yeah, I was like, I am miserable and I'm hating it. And I made a TikTok about this too. If you can go back and look through my TikToks and you can see the first time I tried to get sober, that's when I first joined TikTok. And I felt really guilty about it the next day because I was like, God, I had heard somebody say, if you're miserable just because of the fact that you're sober, the entire time you're sober is going to be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're miserable just because of that one, aspect, then your life is going to be miserable.
Right.
And so I felt really guilty and I got out of that mindset. I ended up relapsing a couple days later, almost a partial halfway of a month later, but still, I think that was like a week sober, but I was, like I said, I wasn't doing the things I needed. I had no base for recovery. I was staunch, like opposer of 12 step. Like I did not want anything to do with that because I had no relationship with God or my higher power, or, I was, like I said, I'm a gay man from the South. God had always been weaponized against me. So I used to have a really good relationship with God before God was used against me. And that was something else I got back in treatment. I got into that moment of surrender, like I said, where I realized I had surrendered 10 years, if not more, of my life to drugs, 1/3 of my life to drugs, an ungodly amount of money, my family, my relationships, my friends, my belongings, everything. I had surrendered all of this to drugs. And if I couldn't surrender to God, then what was I even doing? Or at least the program or recovery, what was I doing?
Right. Because it was human beings that weaponized them.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was in treatment, somebody said on their last night, their coin out, they were like, listen, guys, he's like, I love you all, great, he was one of the first people to leave when I came upstairs out of detox. Mm-hmm. And so I only got a short amount of time with him, but so this was just like right at the beginning of my, before I think I even got to that point of surrender, where he was like, you have been giving up everything in your lives for one thing. And he was like, in order to get all those things back, you just have to give up that one thing. And I was like, God, he's so right. Like, why can't I? I'm clear headed now. I spent 5 days in detox, and it's like I'm like, I feel like a monk, walking into this monastery just of knowledge here. And it's like, Lord, you're right, dude. Like, what am I doing? And
Crazy when the penny drops.
yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I'm just so grateful for all of it. Like, I can't imagine my life otherwise, because I probably would not be alive, or I would be on the street at this point. And like, don't get me wrong, like in my addiction, I was a ruthless person, but like, I'm not cut out to be living on the streets of Boston in 26-degree weather, 30-degree weather, and there are people out there, and that's why I can't stand it when somebody says addiction is a choice. And I'm like,
no,
let me tell you, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite the opposite. I probably comment this 10 times a day on TikTok, and it's, addiction is not a choice. It's the complete opposite. Addiction robs you of the ability to choose and the privilege of choice.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a choice in those things. You're not choosing, and it drives me crazy when I see or hear somebody say, I chose drugs over my child, or I chose drugs over my family, or when I see a comment of a loved one saying he's choosing drugs over his family. And I always just have to say, I'm sorry you're going through that. I know how hard it is. From the other side, I know how hard it is too, but I promise you, it's not a choice. They are not choosing these. They are not making the choice of them. It is a necessity. Their brain has been hijacked, and they do not have the ability to make a choice.
Right.
And
I will tell people, especially children of addicts, stop saying they chose drugs over you, because you are saying out loud that you were not enough. And that's not
absolutely
true. That's
yeah.
not true. Believe me, you are enough. And I will bet you, in lucid moments, every single time they have a lucid moment, you are the first thing that pops into their mind, but it's a horrible
absolutely cycle. It destroyed me, what I did to feed my addiction while I was in addiction. It destroyed me, but I didn't let it stop me.
Right.
And
no, because that
can't. Just goes to show, because you can't, because your brain is literally telling your body, you need this to survive. And that's just what I tell people is, I promise you, it's a disease, just like, and I'm not comparing being gay to a disease or anything, but, people tell me, well, you chose to be gay, or, and I said, I promise you, I did not choose to be gay, because if that were the case, me begging and praying praying to God when I was younger to take it away would have been enough of a thing to change my mind.
Right.
I don't choose that. I don't choose to live a life where I risk, getting my head bashed in every time I hold my boyfriend's hand in public. I don't choose to live that life. I live that life because that's what was given to me, and I wear it proudly, and I'm not going to do anything otherwise. But at the same time, it's like, you have to understand that addiction is not a choice. It is a disease. And, the only thing I can compare it to a non-addict is, it's like hunger. It's like being hungry. And right now, with food in your pantry, you're not going to go throw a rock through a window to get a loaf of bread.
Right.
But when you get to that point of starvation, and your body's shutting down, and your brain is telling you with every fiber in its being to feed it, you're going to do it.
Right.
And that's the only way I can describe it.
Right. And I tell people it's Russian roulette, because the addictive personality disorder is already in there. And most of the time, the choice addicts made is the same choice that millions of others make, and they just wanted to go out and party with their friends, or go out and have drinks with their friends. But the minute they felt that high, they needed to do it again. And very rarely have I ever heard of anyone go from a pill to a needle, or a drink to a needle. No.
Yeah.
It's slow, and it's sneaky, and then it's got you, and that's it. And you've got to do more and more and more stuff to get that high.
Absolutely. And the big book, I'm a 12-stepper. I recognize other people's path to recovery, though. I'm not like, I don't push it on anybody. If you want to, I think it's great, but
I've
the big
taken
book,
all the path.
yeah. Any tool you're going to give me, I'm going to pick it up. I don't really care at this point.
To make you recover, use it. That's
exactly. I'm the exact same way.
Judgment here.
The big book says addiction is baffling, cunning, and powerful, but it also describes it as insidious.
Yep.
And I think the most insidious part about addiction is that it speaks to you in your own voice. And you get to a point where you cannot differentiate those thoughts of what's your addiction speaking and what is your diseased brain literally telling you to do, and what is your own will and your own desire, your own choice.
Geez, that's really good. It's speaking to you in your own voice. That's
powerful. I mean, it comes to you in your own voice, and that's the hardest part because you think it's you. It has enmeshed itself within you, and it is a part of us, but it is not you. It does not define you.
Right.
It
does not.
And that's just what I try and tell everybody. That was probably one of the most powerful things that I took out of treatment. Is it's insidious, and when the teacher of that session said that, I was like, yeah, it is, because it comes to you in your own voice. It speaks in your own voice. It's almost like it's your conscience at that point. Because it feels like you don't have a conscience anymore because you're doing all these things, but no, you do. It's in there. I promise you. I promise you it's in there, but the addiction has just hijacked it.
Exactly. Exactly. Matt, this has been one hell of an interview. This was fantastic. Good.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes. I mean, there is some really powerful stuff in this interview, and I am so grateful that you were willing to come here and put yourself out there and be vulnerable and tell it, because it is going to help somebody. It is going to help somebody.
I hope so. And that's my only goal at this point. We're only as sick as our secrets. Cliche, 18 million and one.
The cliches for reasons.
That I know. Trust me, I use them out more. I feel bad because they're like, oh, here's this dude, 63 days sober, just friggin' machine gun fire on these cliches all over the place. But I'm like, y'all though, they true for a reason. But yeah, I mean, that's my only goal. I just want to help somebody, because I had nobody until I got on TikTok, nobody to say, hey, besides my family, like them trying to do those things, but when it comes from
nobody
family,
that really understood.
Yeah, there's nobody who was a former, I think there was one person my mom had who had now has 10 years sober, celebrated 10 years recently sober, contact me, and that was it. But I wanted nothing to do with it, at the time. But it's if you're at that point where you're seeking out kind of a recovery vibe, or you're even dabbling or questioning it, because at that point in my addiction, I had no desire to stop. I never, I thought I would never stop.
Right.
But if you're at that point where you're kind of dabbling into it or have one foot in the water, might as well just jump all the way in.
Yeah.
I promise you, it's so worth it on the other side. Really so worth it.
It really is. Thank you so much again, Matt.
Enjoy Boston while you really can. Appreciate it. Yeah.
While you're there.
Soon enough, I'll be back. Back down that way. So.
You'll have to let me know when you do. That'll be awesome.
For sure. Absolutely.
All right. Well, you take care, and thank you again.
You too. I appreciate it. Thank you.